The night was cold and wet. The wind howled across the empty colony ruins, carrying the sound of broken metal and falling rain. Ethan Cole sat alone in his small workshop, the only light for miles. He was a human engineer, once part of a great team sent to repair this abandoned world. But everyone had left years ago, leaving him behind with machines, silence, and memories. He was working on an old generator when he heard something strange. It wasn't the sound of metal or wind. It was soft, a cry, weak, distant, and scared. Ethan froze. He lifted his head, listening carefully. Again, there it was. A small voice, almost lost in the storm. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The rain hit his face cold as ice. The colony had once been full of life. Humans, aliens, traitors. But now it was just a graveyard of stone and dust. His boots splashed through muddy puddles as he followed the faint sound. Between two fallen towers, he saw movement. A small figure huddled under a broken steel beam. The light trembled in his hand when he saw her. It wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue, glowing faintly under the rain. Her hair shimmered like silver threads, and one of her arms was missing. Blood, dark and thick, ran down her side. Ethan took a step closer, raising his hand slowly. Hey, it's okay, he said softly, though she probably didn't understand his words. The little alien girl stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. She tried to crawl away but fell, crying in pain. He dropped the flashlight and ran to her side. You're hurt. Don't move. His voice was gentle but firm. He tore a piece of cloth from his jacket and wrapped it around her wound. The girl shivered, shaking violently. She didn't speak, only watched him with fear and confusion. Ethan looked around. Whoever she was, she couldn't survive the night out here. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was light, too light, and cold as snow. He carried her through the storm, back toward his workshop. Inside, he laid her on his workbench. The place was filled with half-built machines, glowing screens, and broken robot parts. She flinched at the strange lights. He turned most of them off to make her calm down. I'm not going to hurt you, he whispered. You're safe here, she didn't answer. Her large silver eyes followed his every move. When he reached for the med kit, she pulled back slightly. He raised his hands again, showing her the tools. See? Tools help, not weapon. He smiled a little, trying to show peace. Slowly, the girl relaxed, her breathing soft and uneven. Ethan worked carefully, cleaning her wound. The missing arm was cut clean, like from an explosion. She didn't scream. She just stared at the ceiling, eyes dull with pain. Hours passed. The storm grew stronger outside, lightning flashing through the cracks of the workshop. Ethan sat beside her, watching the strange patterns on her skin, small marks that glowed faintly like stars. She wasn't just any alien. She looked like something royal, something rare. When she finally slept, Ethan leaned back in his chair. Who was she? Why was she here? And what kind of war had left a child like her wandering through ruins? His console beeped suddenly. He turned to the radar screen. A faint energy pulse appeared in the upper atmosphere like a ship's scan. He frowned. No human vessels had been near this system for years. He switched off the radar quickly, hiding his signal. He looked at the girl again. She moved slightly, murmuring in her sleep. For a moment, he saw tears rolling down her cheek. He stood quietly and whispered to himself, Whoever you are, someone's looking for you. The rain outside began to calm, but the air felt heavier. Ethan walked to the window. Far above the mountains, through the dark clouds, he thought he saw faint lights moving fast, searching. He sighed and returned to the workbench. The girl was awake now, watching him with those bright eyes. She touched his arm gently and pointed at a mechanical hand lying beside her. Ethan smiled. That's a prosthetic arm, he said softly. A replacement. You need one too, don't you? She didn't understand the words, but she nodded, her gaze fixed on the metal piece. He exhaled slowly, his mind already turning with ideas, designs, and calculations. He was an engineer. He couldn't save a world, but maybe he could save one life. The thunder echoed once more across the valley, but this time Ethan didn't flinch. He looked at the girl and said quietly, All right, little one. Let's build you a new arm. Outside, the rain stopped. The storm was gone, but something else had begun. The next morning came quietly. Pale sunlight fell through the cracks in the roof, touching the dusty metal floor of the workshop. Ethan opened his eyes and heard the soft sound of breathing. The alien girl was still there, lying under his old blanket. sleeping peacefully for the first time since he had found her. He stood beside her and studied the small shape of her body. Her missing arm was wrapped carefully with clean cloth. The wound had stopped bleeding, but the pain in her face showed she still suffered. Ethan rubbed his tired eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, kid. I'll fix this." He turned on his workbench lights. Machines came alive, humming gently. Screens flickered with blue data lines. He opened his design pad and began sketching. His hands moved fast as if they already knew what to do. The idea had been building in his mind since last night. A new arm, made not only of metal but also of care. He picked up spare parts, servo joints, micro-hydraulics, small nerve connectors. None were perfect, but they would have to do. He worked with quiet focus, the sound of tools echoing softly through the empty room. After some hours, he heard movement behind him. The girl had woken up. She sat on the work table, watching him curiously. Her silver eyes followed every spark and every turn of his wrench. "Morning," he said softly. She tilted her head but didn't speak. Ethan smiled. "You need a name." "Can't keep calling you hey you." He thought for a moment. "How about Lyra?" The girl blinked, pointing at herself. "Lyra?" he nodded. "Yeah, Lyra." For the first time she smiled, a small, shy smile that made his chest feel warm. He grinned back. "Okay, Lyra it is." From that moment she stayed close to him. She didn't talk much, but she watched everything. When he dropped a screw, she picked it up. When he reached for a tool, she already knew which one he needed. She even copied his movements, pretending to tighten bolts with her remaining hand. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "You're a fast learner," he said. Hours turned into days. The storm outside passed, but strange signs began to appear. One night, Ethan's radar picked up faint pulses again, short, sharp signals from orbit. Someone was scanning the planet. He turned off the radar and sealed the workshop's metal shutters. "They're looking for you, aren't they?" he muttered. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes suddenly filled with fear. She grabbed his sleeve and shook her head as if to say, "Don't let them find me." Ethan nodded slowly. "I won't, you're safe here." He worked even faster now. Sleep meant nothing. He stayed awake through the nights, welding and coding, using every bit of skill he had learned in the colonies. The sound of the torch filled the air, blue sparks dancing across the room. Lyra would sit nearby, holding a small light to help him see better. Sometimes she would hum a strange tune in her own language, soft, beautiful, almost like a lullaby. It calmed him when his hands shook from exhaustion. By the fourth day, the arm was finally ready. It was silver gray, light but strong, built with flexible metal fibers. Inside were microsensors that could react to muscle movements. It wasn't perfect, but it was something alive. Ethan turned to her and said, "Okay, Lyra, let's try it." He helped her sit upright and gently connected the arm's base to the nerves near her shoulder. The lights on the device flickered, then turned steady blue. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the metal fingers twitched. Lyra gasped. Her eyes widened as the hand opened and closed. She moved it again, once, twice, and then she laughed. A bright, pure laugh that filled the silent room. Ethan couldn't help but laugh too. "You did it," he said. "You can move it." But before the joy could settle, something strange occurred. The markings on her skin began to glow. Not just a faint shimmer. This time they shone bright like burning stars. The metal of the new arm pulsed with the same light, reacting to something unseen. Ethan stepped back, shielding his eyes. "What the hell?" Lyra looked scared. She clutched the arm and the light faded slowly until the room was dark again. Ethan's heart pounded. That wasn't normal. He looked at the computer's readings. The energy spike was massive, far beyond human tech. Whatever Lyra was, she wasn't just another alien refugee. She was special, important. He turned off all signals and powered down the generator. The workshop fell silent except for their breathing. Outside, the wind had stopped completely. Ethan knelt beside her and said quietly, "Lyra, who are you?" She didn't answer. She only looked toward the ceiling where the faint hum of engines echoed far above the clouds. And that night, for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt real fear. Not for himself, but for the small alien child sitting beside him. Because somewhere in the dark sky, someone powerful was searching for her. The night came without stars. Thick clouds covered the sky, turning the world into a silent silver shadow. Ethan sat near the workbench, his eyes heavy from sleepless nights. Lyra was sitting on the floor, quietly moving her new arm, fascinated by how it worked. Every small motion brought her joy. The soft whirring sound of the metal hand echoed in the quiet room like a heartbeat. But Ethan couldn't smile. His radar screen glowed faintly on the desk, showing something new, large shapes moving above the atmosphere. They weren't human ships. The signals were too strong, too perfect, too smooth. They were searching, and they were coming closer. He stood up and walked to the window. A faint tremor ran through the ground, just enough to make the tools on the table rattle. "They found you," he whispered under his breath. Lyra looked up at him, confused. "Ethan?" she said softly, her first real word. The sound shocked him. He turned, eyes wide. You spoke?" She nodded slowly, pointing upward. "They coming." His heart sank. "How do you know?" She pressed her new metal hand against her chest as if she could feel something deep inside. "Queen," she whispered. "Mother," Ethan froze. "A queen? A mother?" The truth hit him like a storm. Lyra wasn't just a lost child. She was royal, a princess, maybe even the daughter of someone powerful enough to command armies. Before he could ask anything more, a deep rumble shook the sky. The workshop lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ethan ran to the control panel and switched the external camera on. What he saw made his blood run cold. Above the mountains, the clouds were burning with gold light. Massive alien ships pushed through the storm, their hulls glowing with energy. The air around them rippled like water. The sky itself seemed to tremble. "Lyra, get down," he shouted. He pulled her close and hid her beneath the metal floor hatch he had built for emergencies. She hesitated, scared, but he whispered, "Trust me, I'll keep you safe." The ground shook harder as a beam of light swept across the valley. It passed over the ruins, turning them into silver dust. Ethan crawled to the window, staying low. The ships were scanning the land, searching every inch. He could feel the vibration in his chest. Inside the hidden space, Lyra covered her ears. The hum was so strong it hurt to breathe. She clutched the small pendant around her neck, a crystal that started to glow faintly in response. Ethan noticed it. "What is that?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She whispered, trembling. "Beacon calls them," he understood instantly. The crystal wasn't just jewelry, it was a signal. It was calling the ships to her. "You have to take it off," he said urgently. She tried, but it was bound to her skin through living threads like it was part of her. Outside, one of the ships turned sharply. The light beam focused on his workshop. Ethan's monitor turned white. "Damn it," he muttered, running to shut down every power source. But it was too late. The ship descended lower, its engines roaring like thunder. Wind and dust whipped across the valley. Ethan grabbed a shock rifle, an old one, barely working. He aimed it toward the door, though he knew it would do nothing against them. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the noise stopped. The light vanished. The ships froze in the air, completely still. Ethan held his breath. Why'd they stop? Lyra crawled out from under the floor, tears in her glowing eyes. She looked toward the sky. "They know. I'm alive," she said weakly. Ethan stepped beside her, staring up at the golden ships above. One of them blinked with a strange light. 3 short pulses, one long. It wasn't an attack. It was a message. He whispered, "They're talking to you." Lyra's eyes dimmed with sadness. Not happy," she said, voice breaking. "I ran away." Disobeyed. Ethan crouched down and held her hand. "Hey, whatever they want, they'll have to go through me first." She looked at him like she didn't understand why a human would risk his life for her. But she smiled through her tears, whispering, "Brave human." A soft roar echoed again. The ship started moving away, pulling back into the clouds. The shaking stopped. The valley fell into quiet darkness once more. Ethan didn't trust it. "They're not gone," he said. "They're watching, waiting." He turned back to the girl. "We need to leave this place," but Lyra shook her head. "No, they come here soon," he frowned. "Then we have to be ready." The wind outside whispered like a warning. Ethan started preparing the shelter, checking his equipment and reinforcing the doors. But deep inside, he knew the truth. Nothing he built could stop whatever was coming. That night, Lyra sat near the broken window, her eyes fixed on the stars that peeked through the fading clouds. She whispered something in her language, a soft prayer. Ethan watched her quietly from across the room. The light from her metal arm shimmered faintly in the dark, like a tiny star burning against endless night. And above them, unseen by human eyes, a much larger ship broke through the sky's silence. Sleek, royal and full of power, the flagship of a queen. The tremble in the air returned. But this time it wasn't just thunder. It was destiny, coming straight for them. Morning came quietly, but the air felt heavy as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sky was still gray from the passing ships, and a faint hum could still be heard from far above. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat at his workbench staring at the unfinished blueprint on his screen. Lyra was curled up on a blanket nearby, her new metal arm glowing faintly in the dim light. Every time Ethan looked at her, he felt a strange mix of fear and wonder. She was more than a child, he knew that now. She carried secrets in her blood, something ancient and powerful. He didn't know why she had come to him, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let her go. Not yet. As the wind whispered through the cracks, Lyra stirred and opened her eyes. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice still trembling. He smiled weakly. "Hey there, little star," she blinked. "Why call me that?" He shrugged. "Because you glow. Because even when the sky is dark, you shine." She smiled faintly, then looked at her arm. The silver plates moved with grace, smoother than before, but something still felt incomplete. Ethan noticed it too. "You can move it fine," he said, "but it's not alive." "Not yet." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small crystal core, a tiny piece of quantum circuitry he had been saving for years. It was a human prototype, built to connect artificial limbs directly with living nerves. He had never tested it, but now it was all he had left to give. "This is the last piece," he said. "Once this connects, the arm will feel like it's truly yours." Lyra tilted her head, unsure, but trusted him completely. She sat down and placed her arm on the workbench. Ethan took a deep breath and began working. His hands moved carefully, attaching the crystal near the joint. The moment he touched it to her arm, a faint vibration ran through the metal. The workshop lights flickered once, then again. The power levels rose without warning. Ethan frowned. "That's not possible. It's pulling energy on its own." Before he could react, the symbols on Lyra's skin started to glow again, this time brighter than ever. The air filled with golden light. The metal arm pulsed as if syncing with her heartbeat. Sparks of blue and white light danced across her fingers. Lyra gasped, clutching her chest. Ethan rushed forward. "Lyra, stay with me!" She looked at him, her eyes glowing now, her voice echoing like two tones at once. "It's connecting, to me." And then suddenly it stopped. The light faded. The hum died down. Lyra looked at her hand in disbelief. She could feel it, every finger, every joint, every pulse. It wasn't metal anymore. It was hers. Ethan stood back, speechless. "It worked," he whispered. "You can feel it." Tears filled her eyes. She raised her hand and touched his face gently with her new fingers. "Warm," she said softly. "You make it warm." He smiled, overwhelmed. "Guess humans aren't so useless after all." They both laughed quietly, but the peaceful moment didn't last long. A loud metallic sound echoed outside. Then another. Ethan's heart jumped. He ran to the window and froze. In the distance, tall figures were moving through the ruins. Alien soldiers in shimmering armor. Their eyes glowed white, scanning the ground. They were searching. Lyra saw them too and stepped back, trembling. "Guards," she whispered. "Mother's guards." Ethan turned off all lights. "They're coming here." "Stay behind me." He grabbed his old rifle again, though he knew it wouldn't help much. The footsteps grew louder, shaking the floor. Through the cracks in the door, a golden light spilled in. Then, just as they reached the workshop, everything went silent. A soft voice spoke from outside, calm and regal. "Stand down." The guards stopped instantly. Ethan held his breath. The door creaked as it slowly opened on its own. Light flooded the room. Standing in the doorway was a tall alien woman dressed in silver and gold, her presence commanding and radiant. Her eyes glowed with wisdom and sorrow. Lyra gasped and ran forward. "Mother." Ethan lowered his weapon slowly. The realization hit him like thunder. The alien queen herself had come. The queen knelt down and embraced Lyra tightly. For a moment, the world went still. She touched her daughter's metal arm, tracing the fine lines with her elegant fingers. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Who made this for you?" Lyra pointed at Ethan. "Human." "Ethan." The queen turned her gaze toward him. There was no anger in her eyes, only disbelief and deep respect. She stood and walked closer, her step soft but powerful. You did this? Ethan swallowed hard. She needed help. I couldn't just let her die. The Queen looked at him for a long time, then lowered her head slightly, a gesture of thanks. No one of our kind could heal her. You did what our empire could not. Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. I just did what was right. The Queen smiled faintly. Then you have done more than right, human. You have done something divine. The room filled with a quiet glow as the Queen placed her hand on Lyra's arm again. This gift, she said softly, is beyond technology. It carries your heart in it. Ethan looked at the arm, still shining faintly, and then at the Queen. If that's true, he said, then it belongs to both our worlds. The Queen's eyes softened. Perhaps. It does. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from storms, but from ships preparing to land. The world was about to change forever. The world outside the workshop had gone silent again. The wind had stopped, the air frozen as if holding its breath. Only the faint hum of alien ships far above reminded Ethan that this moment was not a dream. He stood there, staring at the doorway long after the Queen had left with her guards to inspect the area. Lyra sat on the floor beside him, her new arm glowing softly. For a brief moment, everything seemed calm. But deep inside, Ethan knew the quiet wouldn't last. He cleaned the tools on his workbench, trying to calm his shaking hands. The storm of thoughts in his head wouldn't stop. He had met a queen from another world, helped her daughter, and now their ships surrounded his planet. What would happen next? Would they take him away, reward him, or erase him to keep their secrets? The sun dipped behind the mountains, turning the ruins outside into long shadows. The light in his workshop dimmed. Lyra had fallen asleep on a blanket near the warm generator. Her breathing was soft and peaceful, like a child who had finally found safety. Ethan smiled faintly. He turned off the lights and sat by the door, rifle across his knees, watching the horizon. His radar had gone silent, no signals, no movement. Still, his instincts whispered danger. Then it happened. A soft knock. Not loud, not rushed, just a single calm knock on the door. Ethan froze. His hand tightened around the rifle. No one knocked out here. Not humans, not soldiers. Only ghosts, maybe. The knock came again. He looked at Lyra, still sleeping peacefully, then stood up slowly. His boots made no sound on the cold floor. He approached the door, each step echoing in his chest like a drumbeat. Who's there? He called out. No answer. He swallowed hard and unlocked the door halfway. The metal creaked as it opened. A warm, golden light spilled in, bathing the room in color. Standing there was the alien queen. She was alone this time. No guards, no ships behind her, only her soft, glowing presence. The faint scent of unknown flowers followed her, and her eyes, deep and calm, carried the weight of stars. Ethan lowered his rifle immediately. Your Majesty, he said quietly, unsure if he should bow or run. The queen smiled gently. You need not fear me, human. Her voice was smooth and full of grace, yet carried an unspoken power. May I come in? He stepped aside without a word. The queen entered slowly, her silver cloak brushing the dusty floor. She looked around the small workshop, her eyes lingering on the old machines, the half-finished inventions, and finally, on Lyra, sleeping soundly. She rests, the queen said softly. For the first time in many moons, Ethan nodded. She's been through a lot. The queen touched the workbench lightly, her fingers gliding over his tools. You live alone here, far from your own kind? Yeah, he said quietly. Someone had to stay and keep the old systems running. Guess that someone turned out to be me? The queen smiled faintly. A solitary builder. And yet you built something greater than any empire's machines. Ethan wasn't sure how to respond. I just wanted to help her, he said simply. Anyone would have done the same. No, the queen said firmly, her gaze piercing him. Not anyone. Many would have turned away. Some would have sold her for power. But you... She stepped closer, her eyes softening. You gave without wanting anything in return. That is rare among the stars. Ethan felt his throat tighten. She's just a kid. She needed someone. The queen turned her eyes toward the sleeping girl again. She is my only child, she said, her voice trembling slightly. When our ship was attacked, she fled in a damaged pod. We searched every system, every signal. And then I found this. She raised her hand. In it was the small crystal beacon that had once been bound to Lyra's chest. It now glowed faintly blue. Her signal changed. It carried human code, your code. It carried warmth. Ethan's eyes widened. My code? She nodded. Your machines, your designs, they carried your essence. When I saw the pulse, I felt something I had never felt before. Compassion. It drew me here. She looked straight into his eyes, and for a moment, the power in her expression vanished, replaced by pure gratitude. You saved my daughter, Ethan Cole, and in doing so, you saved a piece of me. Ethan didn't know what to say. I just did what felt right, he muttered. The Queen stepped closer, her voice softer than the wind. And that is why I am here, not as a ruler, but as a mother. She placed her hand over her heart. I owe you a debt that cannot be measured. He shook his head. You don't owe me anything, just take care of her. The Queen's eyes shimmered. I intend to. She paused, then added quietly, but I also wish to take care of you. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? She looked toward the sky outside. My people fear humans. They call you unpredictable, dangerous. But I have seen truth. You are not dangerous. You are kind, fragile, and yet stronger than most who claim to be gods. I want my people to see that. Ethan's heart pounded. You want them to see me? The Queen nodded slowly. Yes, you will come with us. You will be honored among the stars, the one who healed the royal child. He looked at Lyra, still sleeping peacefully, then at the Queen. I don't belong among kings and queens, he said softly. I belong here. With machines. With dirt? The Queen smiled knowingly. Even the smallest workshop can change the universe, Ethan Cole. You already have. Then, as the night deepened, the Queen turned toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back one last time and said, When dawn comes, you will have to choose. Stay on this dying world, or walk among the stars. The door closed behind her, and the workshop fell silent once more. Ethan stood frozen, her words echoing in his mind. Outside, the alien ships hummed low in the distance. The knock had come, the choice had been given, and the night would never be the same again. The morning came wrapped in golden mist. The valley was silent, but the air hummed with invisible power. Ethan hadn't slept a moment. He sat near the window, watching the ships that hung in the clouds like silent giants. Their soft glow painted the ruins in silver light. Lyra was awake now, sitting beside the workbench, her new arm gleaming as she turned it slowly, testing each finger. She smiled every time it responded to her will. But Ethan could see something else in her eyes. Sadness, maybe fear. She knew something was coming. When the first beam of sunlight touched the ground, a gentle vibration ran through the workshop. Ethan looked up. A shadow passed across the window, tall, graceful, and surrounded by light. He didn't need to guess who it was. The door opened on its own with no sound. The alien Queen stepped in, her cloak flowing like living silver, her crown faintly glowing with energy. The air seemed to bow around her presence. Lyra rushed forward, her eyes bright. Mother! The Queen knelt and held her daughter tightly. For a moment, the mother's expression softened, warm, full of love. My child, she whispered. You are whole again. She touched the metal arm gently, her eyes shining. He truly made you whole. Ethan stood quietly by the table, unsure what to say. The Queen looked up at him and her expression turned solemn. Ethan Cole, she said. Human engineer. Protector of my child, he nodded awkwardly. Yes, ma'am. I mean, Your Majesty. The Queen gave a faint smile. No need for titles here. You've earned more respect than any royal greeting could offer. She rose to her full height and walked around the workshop, her eyes studying everything, the old engines, the wires, the tools patched with tape. So this is where you rebuilt what even our healers could not. It's not much, Ethan said. Just pieces of junk and old human tech. She turned to him sharply. To you, perhaps. But to me, it is proof that empathy is the strongest force in the universe. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He stayed quiet, unsure how to reply. The Queen stepped closer. Do you know what my people believe about your kind, human? He shook his head slowly. They believe your race is reckless, she said softly. That you destroy what you touch, that you build without heart and fight without reason. She paused, her eyes glowing brighter. But you built with care. You fought for a child not your own. You healed where others would have killed. You have changed what I believe about humanity. Ethan lowered his gaze, feeling the weight of her words. I just did what anyone decent would do. No, she said firmly. You did what few have ever done. You gave kindness to a stranger across the stars. Lyra smiled proudly at him. He's brave, she said softly, her voice full of affection. The Queen's expression softened again. Yes, he is. She turned back to Ethan. Last night I asked you to come with us. My offer still stands. You would live among my people as a hero. You would be safe and honored. Ethan looked around his workshop, his tools, his old generator, the cracked mug on his desk. He sighed. I don't know if I belong there, Your Majesty. I'm no hero. I'm just a man who fixes things. The Queen smiled gently. Perhaps that's exactly what the universe needs, Ethan Cole. Someone who fixes what's broken even when it's not his duty. He looked out the window. The ships floated above, silent and majestic. If I went with you, he asked quietly, what would happen to Earth? To the rest of us? The Queen's eyes darkened. Your world stands on the edge of many choices. My kind watches from afar, waiting to see what path your people take. Some of my council would see your race isolated. Others would see it destroyed. But after what you did, she looked at him deeply. I will see it protected. Ethan's heart skipped. Protected? She nodded. No one will touch your kind. You have shown me that there is worth in humanity, more than my council ever believed. He stared at her, speechless. For the first time, he realized how much his small act had changed. One arm for one child, and now a shift in the fate of two species. The Queen placed her hand on his shoulder. Know this, human. Empires rise and fall by war, but they endure through compassion. You have reminded me of that truth. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to start any empire lessons, he said awkwardly, trying to lighten the moment. The Queen smiled warmly. And yet you have without trying. She turned to Lyra, kneeling again. My daughter, your arm will forever remind you of the kindness of another world. Never forget the man who gave you back your strength. Lyra nodded. I won't, Mother. She looked at Ethan and whispered, Will you come with us? Ethan hesitated. His heart wanted to say yes, but his soul whispered no. I don't know, he admitted softly. The Queen touched Lyra's cheek gently. Do not worry, child. The stars will call him when the time is right. Then she faced Ethan one last time. Tomorrow we leave this world. My ship will remain above your sky until dawn. If you wish to come with us, you need only step outside and look up. The light will find you. Ethan nodded slowly, feeling something heavy settle in his chest. And if I stay, then we will still remember you, she said softly. And the universe will too. With that, she turned and walked out into the brightening morning. The light from her ship enveloped her form until she disappeared beyond the hills. Lyra ran to the door and watched her go. Ethan stood behind her, silent as the sky shimmered with gold one last time. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. Empires rise and fall by war, but they endure through compassion. He looked at his hands, still covered in oil and dust, and whispered, Guess that means I did something right. Outside, the sky trembled again, not with fear this time, but with promise. The next morning came soft and golden. The storm clouds were gone, and the sky stretched wide and calm over the valley. The air smelled clean, almost new, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath after years of silence. Ethan stood outside his workshop, watching the sunrise. His eyes were tired, but his heart was restless. The alien Queen's words echoed again and again in his mind. If you wish to come with us, look up. The light will find you. He looked up now. The sky was clear except for faint golden dots high above. Her ships, still waiting, still watching. He wondered what life among the stars would be like. Could he belong there? A lone human, surrounded by beings who once feared his kind. Behind him, the workshop door opened quietly. Lyra stepped out, her silver hair catching the morning light. Her new arm glowed faintly blue, matching the gentle shimmer of her eyes. You didn't sleep? She asked softly. Ethan smiled a little. Didn't feel like it. Too many thoughts in this old head. She walked closer and stood beside him. For a while, they both just watched the sun climb higher. The light touched her face, making her look even more otherworldly. Yet somehow standing there, she felt familiar, like family. You can still come, she said quietly. Mother said the stars would welcome you. Ethan turned to her, smiling sadly. Yeah, she did. But someone needs to keep this place running. Someone has to stay behind, Lyra frowned. You fix everything, she said. Machines' arms. Hearts, he chuckled softly. Maybe, but this planet's still broken, kid. Maybe fixing it's my next job. She looked down, silent for a long time. Then she held out her metal hand. Then I'll remember you, always. He took her hand gently. And I'll remember you, little star, always. A soft vibration filled the ground. The wind shifted. Ethan looked up again. This time the ships were moving. Lines of golden light crossed the sky like silent rivers. The Queen's fleet was preparing to leave. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. They're calling me, she whispered. I have to go. He nodded slowly, forcing a smile. Go on, Lyra, don't keep your mother waiting. She hesitated, her lip trembling. You'll be alone. Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder. Maybe for a while. But you gave me something I didn't know I needed. She tilted her head. What? Hope. The word hung in the air between them, bright and fragile. Lyra threw her arms around him suddenly, hugging him tight. Ethan froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her, holding her as if she were his own daughter. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. When she finally pulled back, tears glimmered on her cheeks. She stepped away slowly, her eyes never leaving his. Then with a soft hum, her body shimmered. A golden beam of light descended from the clouds and wrapped around her gently. Ethan raised his hand to shield his eyes. The light grew brighter, lifting her slowly off the ground. Lyra smiled one last time. Goodbye, Ethan. He smiled through the blur of tears. Goodbye, Lyra. And then she was gone, drawn upward into the light until she vanished among the stars. The valley was silent again. Only the wind moved, carrying the faint echo of engines fading into the distance. Ethan stood there for a long time, staring at the sky that had just taken his only friend. When he finally turned back to his workshop, it felt emptier than ever. Yet something inside him had changed. He walked to his workbench where a faint blue glow caught his eye. On the table lay a small metallic charm, Lyra's pendant, the one that once called the ships. It pulsed softly as if still alive. He picked it up. On its surface, a new symbol had formed, a combination of human and alien letters. It read, Bond Eternal. Ethan smiled and placed it gently on the shelf above his desk. Guess you left me a souvenir, huh? He whispered. He sat down, staring at the half-built machines around him. The silence no longer felt lonely, it felt peaceful. He grabbed his old notebook and began to draw again. A new design. A new idea. But this time it wasn't just for humans, it was for everyone. Days turned into weeks. The world outside slowly began to heal. Plants grew through cracks. The wind softened and the air shimmered faintly with leftover alien light. At night, Ethan would sit outside and look up at the stars. Sometimes one of them would flicker brighter than the others, gold and blue like her arm. Whenever it did, he smiled. I see you, Lyra, he would whisper. Keep shining. And far beyond the clouds, aboard a great ship drifting through the stars, a young alien girl would pause at her window. She would lift her metal hand and touch the glass, her heart warming as she whispered, I see you too. Then their worlds were light years apart, but their bond was stronger than distance. One man, one child, one act of kindness, and the universe was forever changed. In the archives of the Alien Empire, a new story was recorded. They called it The Human Who Healed the Queen's Daughter, and among the stars that name became legend.